Well, hello and welcome back to Slippy-J Sunday. And today I have, well, another rattlesnake design here. This is from TwoSun. This is the TS246-DA-Horn. And I can tell this was kind of one of their earlier sort of Damascus sort of things. And I'll get into that in a little bit here. But this is kind of a little bit more of a newer offering that they've done on some knives, and that's using Oxhorn. This is probably the least impressive out of the ones that I've picked up. That being that it's almost all transparent. Happy Halloween, by the way. But they do come in a little bit different kind of appearances, depending on the model that you have. This guy's got a pole on him. There we are. It's a full through pole. And we can see here that on this one in particular, you can see this way. And on this one, there was probably some oil left on the blade when they were using the etchant. Most likely ferric chloride, but yeah, I'm not quite sure myself. But yeah, I have run into that on this one in particular. And it's not really a big deal. This knife also does, I haven't seen it in the horn variant, but it does come in S90V as well, if you are looking for much higher end sort of thing. So, as I was talking about with this kind of Damascus stuff here, this is kind of what they had on a lot of their earlier knives. You can't really feel it at all, so it's a lot more like the Damascus cladding that you'll get on a whole bunch of other knives. I'm looking for a particular one. Here we are. Yeah, very, very similar to what Civivi ends up doing with their 9CR based Damascus, or some of the other companies' VG10 based stuff. And it does a pretty darn good job of being attractive. Like I said, this one has those couple of spots where it wasn't fully cleaned off, so they didn't etch quite as much as the rest, so they look a little bit lighter in those particular areas. But hey, I'm fine with that, especially because that color kind of actually matches the horn handles, so I consider it a win. So, something interesting about this is it's a little bit more difficult to take apart because these horn handles, unlike the bone, are actually adhered to the liners. In this case, they're steel, they're not titanium, like a lot of their slip joints tend to be. And that's alright, it just makes it a little bit more difficult to actually take it apart, because you have to deal with two very thick slabs, and with the pins and everything like that. And you can kind of see one of the pins here, all that sort of good stuff. I do have to say, this is a pretty comfortable knife. It's basically a 3.5 fingers sort of affair here. It does have a little bit of a ramp up. The back lock on it, or the back spring, sorry, not incredibly strong, but still does a pretty good job. I would say this is probably around like a 5.5 out of 10 for that. Oh yeah, one other thing I wanted to mention with the Damascus kind of going on here is I have some other newer knives, or at least probably newer manufactured knives, that have a different type of Damascus steel going on here. This is the 252 and 359, which are TwoSun in-house designs. They got a little bit of problem if you close them vigorously because of the brass lanyard loop back there. I don't generally have a problem with it because they're lazy, but if you do slam them down or squeeze on them or whatnot, yep, they will do that to you. But yeah, these are much different. These are very easily felt differing layers kind of going on there. I have no idea with this or with these what steels they're actually using on them. You know, them as well as many other companies don't really ever disclose that whatsoever, but it is a very, very different thing. And with this 252, for example, that was the first knife that I got in that original kind of Damascus. This one even, it's not just under my lights. This knife actually does look green and purple in person as well, rather than yeah, it's a little strange, but yeah, very, very different. And it seems that these are what they're doing with Damascus moving forward, unless maybe they just couldn't get enough of that supply and they picked some up from somebody else for some of these. Not sure. You know, no one can really tell for sure because they don't communicate too well with the general public. But hey, there you go. I do like how they do implement their horn handles. This one is, like I said, you know, a little lackluster as far as the visual component goes, which basically means that I have almost no bark essentially on here, but just the inner horn, and that's fine. It's all the same strength and everything like that. Just doesn't quite look as nice and striking as something like that does. But it still is a very, very nice material to have in your hands. It definitely doesn't feel like bone. It doesn't feel like wood. Almost feels plastic in the amount of smoothness that you can get there. I can tell this stuff isn't pretty much just by, you know, either scratching it or rubbing it and giving it a sniff, and it smells like animal. So I'm pretty sure they're not trying to, you know, fake any of that sort of stuff and just use some really shitty plastic or something like that going on there. It is actual horn, so that's nice. Horn is a little bit more durable than bone is. It will split a little bit more easily than bone will. Like normal fingernails, like the problem that I generally have, which is why I have some sort of color or something like that on there as kind of a protective layer. But yeah, it can split on you, but pretty much on these guys, the only way you're going to do that is by over-tightening the screws. And, you know, generally as this thing is kind of adhered together, you probably don't really want to take this apart unless you absolutely have to. But hey, we can see on the inside, as I have it there, that we do have a stop pin in there. So, yeah, we don't have any blade wrap going on whatsoever on that. And I do like the kind of rather bulbous leaf-like shape going on the blade there. It is quite nice. Generally, on a knife like this with the ramp up here, I would probably prefer to have some jimping up there. But hey, it's a slip joint. I understand that you know, they don't really want to encourage you to push it because that will get the blade all disengaged and all that sort of stuff. This one in particular doesn't exactly have the best fit and finish out of anything I've ever received from TwoSun. And that's mostly, at least on this side here, it's mostly the adhesive and when they actually drilled those holes or whatnot. It doesn't necessarily bother me, especially because I don't carry this thing on a daily basis. But hey, something to point out that, you know, they're not absolutely perfect all the time. They just, you know, seem to have a little bit better track record than a lot of other Chinese manufacturers seem to do. So there's that in particular. If I hadn't mentioned it, I know it's in the title, but this is a RattleSnake design. And like the other one that I had taken a look at last week, which, hey, I still have on my counter because, well, I haven't cleaned up in a while. It seems like they do a better job designing slip joint handles that are actually comfortable and whatnot than they do with their outlandish knives. Seems like they are getting better. The 6-leaf knives, the SL01 and 02 especially, I think are a lot more comfortable than the ones that they've done in collaboration with TwoSun. So at least they are improving. I do like to see that from, you know, whoever it might be who's designing knives out there in the wild. So that's nice. But this one's pretty nice. You know, it's got that kind of arch going on in there. Obviously, goes a little bit here on the top as well. Really does fit nicely on the hand. Now this thing is not exactly thin. Let's see, I got my stats for it right over here. It's 0.59 inches, so it's quite a bit thicker than like a PM2. So this might be a little bit large for some people to just throw down in a pocket or something like that. Hey, TwoSun does make these leather belt pouches as well, and both medium and large sizes, and that works out pretty darn well for something like that, if that's kind of the way that you want to go. Elsewise, you could probably get one of those neat little pocket slips from MKM or something like that. If you wanted something fancy and Italian to go along with that, then hey, you could do that, and they're not all that expensive. 10 or 15 bucks or something like that. But, okay, so I've talked a bit about the ergonomics, talked about the design, talked about the steel. How about if I do what I probably should have done in the beginning of the video here, and let's go with some size comparisons, and I can get a little bit more stats going on there. So there is a range buster from Boker. There is the Artisan Cutlery Biome, which is... I like it as a slip joint, but I don't hear a whole lot of people talking about it. It's probably overshadowed quite a bit by the Real Steel Luna, which is another nice knife. Trying to take this thing apart, especially if you do want to remove that pocket clip, is a little difficult. I've covered that before in the past. And sure, because it's kind of cute and whatnot, here's the Spyderco Grasshopper. They make these in black now, by the way. That's these things are a little interesting in that these are 12C27, but they do have two smaller ones that look freaking identical, just smaller. Which is the honeybee and a bug. And with these, they don't say the steel on them, they just say Spyderco. And that's because they're in HCR13 MOV. I did not know that. I saw that this one was in 12C27. I'm like, well, I want the whole range then. And now I know that they are different in steels. So yeah, keep that in mind, I suppose. Not like it's hugely influential on this particular knife whatsoever. Just figured since they were out there, I would mention it. So yeah, the blade length on this guy, 2.75 inches. Under 3 inches, nice. Fairly decent tall blade. Does come down to a pretty nice point there. There's not a really hefty shoulder going on. I do have this sharpened to 20 degrees, which is what I generally do for most Damascus, because unless you're spending in the upper hundreds to thousands to get a knife with Damascus steel in there, it's not powder metallurgy. A lot of times it's fairly simple stuff. And or carbon steel, which I generally don't want to have super, super thin anyway. So there's kind of my reasoning behind that. The blade stock thickness on this is 3.5, but you can see that, you know, we do have a swedge kind of going on up here at the top, and it's quite tall, so yeah, it does have some pretty good slicing geometry going on there. And last but finally, the weight on this thing is 2.55 ounces, or 72 grams. So, hooray, it is definitely a knife that fits in that ounce and inch category. Not exactly the easiest to carry on your person if you have some smaller pockets, but hey, that's kind of some of the concessions you end up making when you carry around some slip joints, especially some of the larger ones like these guys. But all right, so that was everything that I really wanted to go over here on the TS246-DA-Horn. It's a pretty fun knife. I liked it quite a bit. It's probably not my favorite TwoSun slip joint, because, man, they do have some bangers out there in the wild now. But I certainly do like the handle material, and this is one of a few that I have from them in it. That TS252 being another one, and one of their fixed blades from Jipo, which is fantastic, but is a little bit out of reach, so I won't pull that out at the moment. All right, so as always, I appreciate y'all for watching. Happy Halloween, and have yourself a wonderful rest of your day, yo. Please subscribe.